Are social media accounts the digital evolution of diaries? Hello and welcome to Charlotte County Libraries and Histories first archival collection spotlight presentation. I'm the librarian archivist Samuel Alexander. In these presentations, I'll be highlighting select materials from our collections. For this initial demonstration, I will be highlighting the Daniel Child Diaries, which are part of the Vernon and Jane Peoples collection and can be found online in our library catalog. A link to these diaries can be found in the information section below. As an acknowledgement, the materials in this presentation utilize derogatory language reflective of the era's culture. Charlotte County counts Daniel Child as an early pioneer of Murdoch. Born in 1876 to Daniel Wright Child and Nara Child, Daniel moved with his family to Florida in 1894. Although they first resided in Bowling Green, the Childs moved to Arcadia in 1895, where Nara edited a local newspaper, The Champion. Daniel Wright Child frequently worked outside of Florida, serving under the Quartermaster Department in Puerto Rico during the Spanish-American War, and then operating a ranch in Cuba. Daniel Child moved away from his family in Arcadia prior to the 1910 census. Although an exact date for when he moved to Murdoch could not be identified, his diaries show he was already living in Murdoch in the early 1910s and making impressions in the community. His 1912 diary began on April 18, 1912 in Cuba and finished on January 17, 1913 in Murdoch. Additionally, in his 1916 diary, he identifies himself as Daniel Child of D.W. Child and Son in Murdoch, Florida, working with Cuban saddle ponies. Additionally, he became Murdoch Post Office first postmaster in 1917, purchased land in Murdoch in 1925, and served on and off the election board throughout the years, such as serving as the election clerk in 1938. I found Daniel Child's diaries interesting to gaze through. I hope through highlighting some of the details I've noticed while looking through them, you'll become interested in viewing them as well. Although the date of the diaries ranges from 1912 to 1955, the diaries from the 1910s are primarily written in Spanish, presenting a language barrier for those unfamiliar with the language, such as me. Despite this, however, there is still plenty of information to be gained from just skimming the 1910s diaries, such as the language being Spanish instead of English, which is an interesting detail in and of itself. Although it's possible Daniel Child wrote in Spanish to practice the language for practical usage, since his father had a ranch in Cuba and the Spanish language has dwelled in Florida for centuries, I believe it's more likely Spanish was a language Daniel Child was already comfortable with. In part, this is because extensive use of shorthand writing in the diaries suggests Daniel Child was writing in a way comfortable for him. Regarding the shorthand writing, although they are hard to make out, the usage of numbers and units of measurement indicate they may have been work-related. This is supported by the lack of shorthand notes from July 4th through most of August in 1916, as Daniel Child had married his wife Nora on July 13th, 1916, in Virginez, Vermont, and did not return to Murdoch until August 4th. As a fun aside, Virginez, Vermont is the smallest incorporated city in Vermont in terms of population. Although the 1912 and 1916 diaries provide insight into that decade, the bulk of Daniel Child's diaries are from the 1930s, 1940s, and early 1950s. As I read through these later diaries, I thought of them as something akin to a social media account. Daniel Child's diaries highlights news and personal events mirroring how we use social media in our digital age. For example, his August 8th, 1945 diary entry highlights the birth of his niece, Willie Royala Child. On the same page, however, he wrote about the atomic bombing of Hiroshima. A recurring detail I've noticed about these notes, however, is that Daniel Child rarely wrote down his personal feelings regarding these news headlines. His record for September 2nd, 1945, for example, recognized VJ Day, but he primarily recorded his own personal life for the day rather than any views regarding the end of World War II. An example of Daniel Child writing with emotion, however, can be seen in his notes for November 24, 1938, Thanksgiving Day. In this entry, he recorded what he's thankful for, which includes living in the United States instead of Germany. On one last highlight, the 1938 diary additionally contains two statements relating to a cert Daniel Child lost while working with the WPA, or Work Progress Administration. In the first entry, October 28, Daniel Child wrote about forgetting a cert he left in a truck the day before and how he looked in the same truck again the next day and didn't see it. On the November 9th entry, Daniel Child recorded how he asked the truck driver about the cert and nevertheless still had no luck finding out what happened to it. I end on this anecdote as I believe it embodies my personal takeaway from going through the Daniel Child diaries. Daniel Child's diaries focused on his personal activities even though he lived through eventful periods such as World Wars I and II, the influenza pandemic of 1918, the Great Depression, and the start of the Cold War. And although the news headlines are different, we're also living in lively times in Charlotte County. Although we view the past as an altogether different world at times, it's genuinely not. For this reason, looking to the lives of the past can be helpful, whether through providing valuable information or via providing comfort by showing we're not alone in our experiences. Even if they didn't possess our digital technology, our predecessors still left behind records that resemble the ones we're leaving behind with social media. I hope this presentation has interested its viewers in looking at the Daniel Child Diaries available for digital access using the Charlotte County Libraries and History Catalog. I know I appreciated the experience of examining them. And that's all for the first archival collection spotlight presentation. If you enjoyed this video, let us know in the comments. Like, subscribe, and tell your friends.